Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as we talk about potting up seedlings. So let's go. Whether you're new to seed starting or you've been doing it for a number of years, I think you'll find some useful information in this video. I've been starting seeds under grow lights for well over 20 years, and I have to admit one of the tasks that I really don't like to do is to pot up my seedlings. But I have to be honest with you, it's one of the most important things you need to do when it comes to starting seeds indoors. So in case you're wondering, what does it mean to pot up a plant? It basically means to take out a plant or transplant it from a smaller pot into a bigger pot. I often use the analogy of bumping up from a small apartment up to a condo into a house. It's like you start off in a small, cozy little area, but then eventually you outgrow that area and you need to get something a little bigger. The same idea applies with potting up plants. So let's first talk about when would you pot up a plant. There are a lot of indicators. One of the most obvious indicators is lifting up a pot, looking at the bottom of it, and if you see roots coming out from the bottom of the pot, that means it's time to pot up that plant. Another indicator is if you actually remove the plant from its pot and you see roots circling around and around, that tells you it's time to pot up that plant. You might often hear of the word root bound or pot bound. That's exactly what's going on when you see those roots circling like that. And then a final indicator that I can think of is what I call the top-down approach. If you're looking at a plant from above and you're staring down at it and you see that the plant just looks a lot bigger than the pot that it's in, that's also another sign that it's time to bump up that plant into a bigger pot. And that all sounds great, but you might still be wondering, why? Why do I need to pot up a plant? I feel the number one reason why you want to pot up a plant is you want to ensure that you keep that plant nice and healthy. It allows for those roots to continue growing, to continue getting bigger, because if they're circling around and around, it gets to a point where the roots cannot grow anymore. In other words, a root-bound plant is an unhealthy and a very unhappy plant. When you think about it, when those roots are circling around and around, that means that the roots are constricted. They can't spread out and they can't flourish. However, if you do pot up a plant, not only will you end up with a healthier plant, you'll end up with a bigger plant also. Potting up a plant might be tedious and time consuming, but honestly, there are not a lot of steps involved with potting up a plant. Step number one is you want to choose a container that's about 2 to 3 times larger than the container that the plant is currently in. You don't need to choose a container that's, let's say, 10 times larger, all because you don't want to pot up so many times. I'm going to tell you why. Plants are actually happier when they're in a container that's a little bit bigger than what they need. If you put a plant in a very, very big container, what might end up happening is you might actually end up overwatering that plant or not watering that plant enough. In other words, it's a lot easier to monitor the plant and the moisture control in the soil if the pot is just slightly bigger than what the plant needs. So once you've chosen a pot that's about 2 to 3 times larger than the previous pot, then you want to fill it with some sort of a potting mix. And that potting mix should be pre-moistened, because once you start moving that plant, it's going to go under a little bit of shock. So you want to make sure that it doesn't go under too much shock. You can use whatever potting mix you want. You just want to make sure that it's well draining. I like to make my own potting mix because it's a lot cheaper since I do a lot of seed starting indoors, but you can definitely buy your potting mix if you want to. Once you've put the potting mix in your container, you want to tamp it down to eliminate any air pockets. But don't tamp the soil down too much. If you do that, it makes it harder for those roots to grow and flourish. And then you can use your finger or any sort of a tool to make a hole inside of the potting mix where the plant is going to get placed. And then you want to release the plant from its pot. And depending on the type of pot, there are so many different ways you can do it. You can squeeze the bottom of the pot and help release the plant that way. Or you might have a large hole in the bottom of your pot. You can use some sort of a tool or device to help pop out the plant out of your pot. But always remember, if you are going to handle the plant from the top, never handle a plant from its stem, because you can crush and kill the plant. It's always better to handle the plant either from its roots or from its leaves. And then you want to make sure that the roots are below soil level and the top part of the plant where the leaves are above soil level. If your plant has become tall and leggy, now is a great time to bury the plant just a little bit deeper. Now keep in mind, some plants like to be buried deeper and some plants don't. So do your research before you start doing this process. And then just make sure you backfill around the base of the plant and then go ahead and bottom water your plant. And then after you're all done, you can go ahead and place your plant back under the grow lights. I really hope you enjoyed this short tutorial that discussed when, how, and why to pot up seedlings. Be on the lookout for more videos where I explain how and why to bottom water plants, as well as how to start different plants from seed. As always, let me know if you have any questions or comments, and until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.